Joseph stood in the courthouse hallway, his palms sweating as he clutched the forged marriage certificate. His 4-year-old daughter, Isabella, tugged at his sleeve, her innocent brown eyes looking up at him with confusion. He never imagined his life would come to this moment. Standing beside a woman he barely knew, about to lie to a judge to keep his daughter. Before we continue, let us know where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. 3 months earlier, Joseph's world had shattered. His ex-wife Miranda had abandoned them without warning, leaving only a note that said she couldn't handle motherhood anymore. She disappeared completely, and Joseph was left alone to raise Isabella. He thought he could manage. He was wrong. The problem started when Isabella's preschool called Child Protective Services. A teacher had noticed Isabella wearing the same clothes for 3 days straight and eating only crackers for lunch. Joseph had been working double shifts at the warehouse, trying to make ends meet, and he'd simply lost track of everything. He wasn't neglecting his daughter on purpose. He was drowning. The CPS caseworker, a stern woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, gave him an ultimatum during their first meeting. Her words still echoed in his mind every single day. "Mr. Thompson, Isabella needs stability. You're a single father working 16-hour days. You have no family support, no childcare plan, and frankly, your living situation is inadequate. Unless circumstances change dramatically in the next 90 days, we'll be forced to place Isabella in foster care while we assess long-term options." Joseph had begged. He'd promised to do better, but Mrs. Rodriguez had seen it all before. She needed proof, not promises. She needed to see a stable home environment, consistent childcare, and preferably a 2-parent household. That night, Joseph sat in his tiny apartment, watching Isabella sleep on their worn-out couch. He'd already converted the only bedroom into her room, sleeping in the living room himself. How could he lose her? She was everything to him. She was his reason for breathing. He'd met Jessica 2 weeks later, purely by accident. Joseph had been at the laundromat at 2 in the morning, because it was the only time he could squeeze it into his schedule. Jessica was there too, folding clothes with methodical precision, her red hair pulled back in a messy bun, exhaustion written across her face. They'd started talking the way strangers do in lonely places at odd hours. She told him she was a nurse working night shifts at the county hospital. She'd just moved to town 3 months ago after a bad breakup. No family nearby, no friends yet. Just work in an empty apartment. When Joseph's phone rang and he stepped away to take the call from yet another caseworker, Jessica couldn't help but overhear. His desperation was palpable. His voice cracked when he said, "Please, she's all I have. I'll do anything." After he hung up, Jessica did something completely out of character. She approached him with an insane proposition. "I heard your conversation. I'm sorry for eavesdropping, but I might have a solution." She paused, seeming to reconsider, then pushed forward. "What if we got married? Fake married, I mean. Just on paper. It would give you the stable 2-parent household they're looking for." Joseph had stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're joking. I'm completely serious. Look, I need a place to stay anyway. My apartment lease is month to month, and I hate living alone. You need someone to help make your home look stable. We could help each other. It would be a business arrangement. Nothing romantic, just roommates who happen to be legally married. Why would you do this for a complete stranger?" Jessica's expression had softened. "Because I know what it's like to be in the system. I grew up in foster care. If there is even a small chance I can keep a little girl with her father who clearly loves her, then I want to help. Kids belong with parents who love them, not lost in the system." That conversation had been 6 weeks ago. Now, they were about to walk into a courtroom for Isabella's custody hearing, presenting themselves as a married couple who'd been together for 8 months. They'd backdated their marriage certificate. They'd created a fake dating history. They'd moved in together and transformed Joseph's dingy apartment into something that actually looked like a family home. Jessica had been incredible. She'd deep cleaned every corner, added curtains and throw pillows, put up photos she'd photoshopped to make it look like they'd been together for months. She'd created an entire fictional backstory of their relationship. She'd even helped Joseph reorganize his work schedule, using her own nursing connections to find him a better-paying job with reasonable hours at the hospital maintenance department. But more than that, she'd bonded with Isabella in a way that stunned Joseph. The little girl had been withdrawn and anxious since her mother left. She barely spoke anymore. She had nightmares every night, but Jessica had a gentle, patient way with her. She'd sit with Isabella for hours, reading stories, playing dolls, teaching her to braid hair. Within 2 weeks, Isabella started smiling again. Within 4 weeks, she was calling Jessica Jessie and holding her hand everywhere they went. Joseph watched this unfold with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. Jessica was giving them everything, asking for nothing in return except a place to stay and help with rent. She deserved the truth, but he was terrified that if he examined his own feelings too closely, their arrangement would fall apart. The courtroom door opened. Mrs. Rodriguez emerged, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. "The judge is ready for you now." T-Sucker and Jessica exchanged a glance. She squeezed his hand once, a gesture that looked natural and affectionate to anyone watching. Isabella wrapped her small arms around both their legs, creating a picture-perfect family moment. They walked into the courtroom together. Judge Brennan was an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through people. She reviewed the documents in front of her, occasionally glancing up at the trio standing before her. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed your case extensively. 3 months ago, you were on the verge of losing custody of your daughter. The reports indicated an unstable home environment, inadequate supervision, and concerning signs of neglect." Joseph's heart hammered in his chest. Jessica's hand found his again, steadying him. "However," the judge continued, "the recent reports paint a dramatically different picture. You've secured better employment with reasonable hours. Your home is clean, organized, and appropriate for a child. Isabella's preschool reports that she's thriving. Her attendance is perfect, and she appears happy and well cared for." The judge's eyes moved to Jessica. "I understand you recently married Mrs. Thompson here." "Yes, Your Honor," Joseph managed to say. 8 months ago?" The judge's eyebrow raised slightly. 8 months? But according to your initial CPS report, you were identified as a single father with no support system. Joseph's blood ran cold. They'd made a mistake in their timeline. Jessica jumped in smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may explain. Joseph and I kept our relationship private initially. I was going through a difficult divorce in another state, and we wanted to wait until everything was finalized before going public with our relationship. We got married quietly before my divorce was even complete, which I know was technically wrong, but we were in love and impatient." She smiled apologetically. "When CPS first got involved, Joseph was protecting my privacy during a difficult time. But once we realized how serious the situation was, we knew we had to be honest about our relationship and living situation. It was a good save, a believable explanation." The judge studied Jessica for a long moment, then looked down at Isabella, who was drawing pictures in a coloring book Joseph had brought. "Isabella, sweetheart, can you come here for a moment?" The little girl looked up, hesitant. Jessica gave her an encouraging nod, and Isabella slowly approached the judge's bench. "Hi there, I'm Judge Brennan. That's a beautiful picture you're drawing. Is that your family?" Isabella nodded shyly. She held up the picture. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands. A tall one labeled Daddy, a medium one labeled Jessie, and a small one labeled me. Above them, she'd drawn a big red heart. "Tell me about Jessie," the judge said gently. Isabella's face lit up. "Jessie makes the best pancakes, and she reads me stories every night. 3 stories, not just one. And she taught me how to braid hair. See?" She pointed to her hair, which was indeed in a slightly crooked but endearing braid. "And when I have bad dreams, she lets me sleep in the middle, between her and Daddy, and she says the bad dreams can't get me there." The judge's expression softened. "That sounds very nice. Are you happy at home?" I love Jessie. And Daddy is happy now too." He smiles more. "Thank you, sweetheart. You can go back to your drawing now." As Isabella returned to her spot, the judge reviewed her notes one final time. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Finally, Judge Brennan spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'll be frank with you. Something about your timeline doesn't quite add up, and I've been doing this long enough to know when people are stretching the truth." Joseph felt his world collapsing. They'd been caught. It was over. "However," the judge continued, "what I also know is that Isabella is clearly thriving. She's happy, healthy, and bonded to both of you. Whatever the exact details of how this family came together, the result is a child who is loved and cared for. And that's what matters most to this court." She stamped a document decisively. "Cliff City will remain with Mr. Thompson. This case is closed. CPS involvement will be terminated, though I recommend voluntary check-ins with family services for the next 6 months. just to ensure continued stability. Good luck to all of you. It took Joseph a moment to process what had happened. They'd won. Isabella was his. She was safe. Jessica let out a breath she'd been holding. Isabella, sensing the adult's relief, jumped up excitedly. "Can we go get ice cream now? You promised." As they left the courthouse, Joseph felt like he was floating. They'd pulled it off. The nightmare was over. Isabella was chattering happily about which ice cream flavor she wanted, skipping between them and holding both their hands. But as the adrenaline faded, reality set in. Now what? They'd agreed this was temporary. Just until the custody hearing was over. Jessica had fulfilled her part of the bargain. There was no reason for her to stay anymore. That night, after Isabella was asleep, Joseph and Jessica sat at the small kitchen table, cups of coffee growing cold between them. "So," Jessica said finally, "I guess that's it. We did it." "Thank you doesn't even begin to cover what you did for us." "You don't have to thank me. I wanted to help." "What happens now?" Joseph asked, voicing the question that had been haunting him all evening. Jessica looked down at her coffee. "I suppose we start the annulment process. Give it a few months so it doesn't look suspicious, then quietly end things. You and Isabella can move on with your lives, right?" "Of course." Joseph paused. "Unless... unless what?" "Unless you didn't want to... leave. I mean..." The words tumbled out before he could stop them. "Jess, these past 2 months, having you here, it's been... Isabella loves you, and I... He couldn't quite finish the sentence. Jessica's eyes met his, and he saw something there he hadn't noticed before. Or maybe he had noticed but hadn't let himself acknowledge it. "Joseph, we can't. This was a business arrangement. We agreed. I know what we agreed. But things change. Feelings change." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Haven't they? Tell me I'm not imagining this." Jessica's walls crumbled. "You're not imagining it." "God, Joseph, I've been trying so hard not to feel anything. This was supposed to be simple. Help you keep Isabella, have a place to stay, then move on. But Isabella... and you've both become so important to me. Then stay. Not as a fake wife. As a real partner. We can take it slow, figure things out as we go. But please don't leave. Isabella needs you. I need you." Tears welled in Jessica's eyes. "I'm scared. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not good enough? I don't know how to be a mother. I never had one. You've been more of a mother to Isabella in 2 months than Miranda was in for years. You're already enough. More than enough." Jessica laughed through her tears. "This is crazy. We barely know each other." "Then let's get to know each other. For real this time. No fake backstories, no lies, just us building something genuine." Jessica stood up, walked around the table, and kissed him. It was soft and tentative and filled with the possibility of something real. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Okay, let's try this. For real." 6 months later, Joseph stood in a different courthouse. This time with his mother, Jessica's foster sister, who'd flown in from across the country, and Isabella in a flower girl dress. They were getting married again, but this time it was real. Isabella held the rings, beaming with pride at her important job. Judge Brennan, who'd heard about their story through Mrs. Rodriguez, had volunteered to officiate. She'd suspected the truth all along, but had chosen to prioritize the child's well-being over technicalities. "Do you, Joseph, take Jessica to be your lawfully wedded wife, in truth and love, for real this time?" Joseph looked at the woman who'd saved his family and stolen his heart. Absolutely I do." "And do you, Jessica, take Joseph to be your lawfully wedded husband, with all the chaos, pancakes, and bedtime stories that entails?" Jessica laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I do, forever." As they kissed, Isabella cheered loudly, making everyone laugh. After the ceremony, as they walked out into the sunshine, Isabella tugged on Jessica's dress. "Jessie, can I call you Mummy now? For real?" Jessica knelt down, pulling the little girl into a tight embrace. "Bae, you can call me anything you want. I'm not going anywhere. I'm yours forever. Promise. Promise. Promise." Joseph wrapped his arms around both of them. His miracle family that had started with a desperate lie in a laundromat at 2 in the morning and had somehow transformed into the most real, true thing in his life. What was meant to be temporary had become permanent. What was meant to be fake had become the truest love he'd ever known. And the miracle wasn't just that he'd kept his daughter. The miracle was that he'd found a partner who loved Isabella as fiercely as he did, who'd chosen them both, when she had no obligation to do so. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes a chance encounter with a stranger becomes the beginning of everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, a fake marriage meant to fool the system ends up being more real than anything else. As they drove home, Isabella between them in her car seat, singing off-key, Joseph reached over and took Jessica's hand. She squeezed back, her wedding ring, the real one this time, catching the sunlight. They were a family. Not by blood, not by obligation, but by choice, and that made it all the more powerful. The temporary arrangement had become forever, and Joseph wouldn't have it any other way.